You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that had, has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech Podcast, and I have Dr. Emily Splichal. She's the founder of Naboso Technology, and she's also a functional podiatrist. So, Emily, thanks for coming.
Of course. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, tell me about Naboso. What is it, and what's the premise of the company?
Absolutely. So Naboso Technology is the first and only proprioceptive insole and mat company that is on the market, and we are targeted towards medical performance and wellness. As mentioned in the description, we have both insoles that we have, so that's one of our product lines, and then we have 4 different types of mats, again, for the purpose of rehab, medical, and then fitness performance.
So starting with the insoles, what's different about them versus traditional just monolithic dead insoles? What do yours do that's different?
Yeah, so through the Naboso insoles, we are trying to bring the concept of sensory stimulation into the insole industry or the insole market. Most people, when they think about insoles, they probably think arch support. Some people might go to either custom orthotic or to even Dr. Scholl's. So there's some stereotypical associations that people put with insoles. A lot of them have to do with more biomechanical influences of the foot, where we look at foot function and foot stimulation from a sensory or neurosensory perspective. So when you look at our insoles, there's a texture, little pyramid textures or 2-point discrimination texture that is across the entire insole. The height of it is pretty low. It's 1 to 1.5 millimeters, and each of the textures is spaced very specifically apart from each other to stimulate the nerves in the bottom of the feet.
So what happens when you wear the insoles and they're stimulating the bottom of your feet but with different textures and depths and all that? What does that do to you and for you?
Yeah, so the skin on the bottom of the feet is a very powerful access point to how your body controls posture and balance when you're standing upright in gravity, whether that's static or dynamically thinking walking. So it is that stimulation of the skin in the bottom of the foot that helps to tell the brain where the body is in space, and then that coordinates subtle shifts in the center of gravity, again, both statically or dynamically. So we have the texture, 2-point texture all across the bottom of the top of the insole. You could think of it almost like a braille texture, because we're actually stimulating the same nerve in the feet that you read braille with your fingertips. So we're actually stimulating the same nerve. That nerve happens to be the most superficial nerve in the skin in the bottom of the feet, or it's the closest to the surface or to the ground, and it is sensitive to the 2-point discrimination. So anytime you look at textured insole research, where there's actually quite a bit of research in this category, they're really looking at what's called 2-point discrimination, or put your mind back to what you think of braille, because braille is a 2-point discrimination, and then that's how the finger can differentiate between the different points.
Oh, so what do people experience that wear these soles? What's the goal for them?
Yeah, so some people will either feel a reconnection to their feet. Most people, or a lot of people, if they're not into, I guess, barefoot movement or foot fitness, or they're not in an industry. I'm a podiatrist, so I think about feet all the time. But if you're not thinking of feet or foot function, most people tune out their feet. They don't think of them when they're standing or when they're walking. Actually, in most shoes and socks and insoles, you start to lose an association with your feet, so you don't really feel them. You know they're there, but you can't quite sense them. I call it tuning out. So a lot of people tune out their feet. So when we have people use the Naboso insoles, one of the first things that they notice is that it forces them to tune into their feet. So it could just be like, oh, I feel my feet as I'm standing here. I feel the texture. But that translates to them feeling their feet. The more you feel your feet or the sensation of the texture under your feet, that now places a higher awareness to how you're standing on your feet. So your whole posture might shift. As you walk, since you have an awareness of your feet, it might actually change how hard you strike the ground or your foot placement when you strike the ground. All of that can have an effect on impact forces. So we've had people say, when they wear the Naboso insoles, their knee doesn't bother them anymore. Their hip doesn't bother them anymore. And a lot of that could be the decrease in jarring forces from perhaps more unconscious, unaware movement that they have because they're not really connected to the ground. If we have users who have a compromise in their balance and their stability, either because of a medical condition such as neuropathy, MS, Parkinson's, a stroke, any of the chronic neurological conditions, what they notice is, in addition to an increased sensation to their feet, is it translates to them as better balance. So they feel less fearful when they're walking. They feel more stable when they stand or walk or turn or go upstairs. So depending on the user, medical conditions, we see more of the wow immediate effect on them. People who have no known medical conditions but have kind of a tuned out awareness of their feet, they definitely notice their feet. And then for any of the athletes or from a fitness perspective, people may notice that they connect to the core. We've actually had people say, I feel my core when I'm standing in these, which surprises them, but it makes sense when you think of how the body controls posture and center of gravity. Is the feet and your connection to the ground is deeply connected to where your body's center of gravity is, which is the core.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have very flat feet, so I have orthotics, and I've had, I worked out and stuff, so I've had times where like my calves are tight or my legs are hurting, and my foot doesn't feel like it's making contact with the floor evenly. I feel like parts of my foot are not touching the floor, and then after I get a massage, I feel like more of my foot is touching the floor. I'm standing flatter on my foot, and that feels better. And
Yep.
Yeah, so I can understand that.
Yep.
And I guess if you have neuropathy or if you're old, you're in a lot of danger because you don't have much sense of what your foot's doing on the ground, so you're pretty likely to slip.
Yeah, those who actually have neuropathy, regardless of the neuropathy, whether it's diabetic, chemo, idiopathic, have a 15 times greater fall risk. So that's really of a profound number. And once these individuals have their first fall, now you start to instill fear, which further increases fall risk because their movements are now almost hyper-aware. So through using the Naboso insoles or any technique to reconnect to their foundation will help them reduce their fear, improve their confidence, improve their mobility, and then reduce falls.
Do people have to work their way into wearing these things? Wear them for an hour the first day and a few hours the next day, or is it? Do they feel overwhelmed where there's too much sensation and they get burned out wearing them all of a sudden?
Yeah, so everyone is a little bit different when it comes to texture. Some people are a little bit more sensitive. Some people are what's called tactily defensive, which means they actually have systemic physiological response to different textures and sensations. For those, we recommend our lower stimulus insole, and then they can do exactly what you said. However, for the majority, great majority of those who use Naboso insoles is we say use them for 30 minutes just to see how you adjust to them, a majority. respond positively. They like the sensation. They don't want to get out of them. So we say, then you're good to go. You can put them in your shoes, wear them all day, every day. If you feel like it's too much and you happen to be out and about, simply take them out and then, obviously just carry them with you. And then tomorrow you can put them in again. But the break-in period is not like custom orthotics, where a lot of people think 1 hour the first day, 2 hours the next day, and you slowly want to increase. Again, sensory, very different. Now, when you wear the Naboso insoles, and let's say you wear them all day, every day, some people may start to tune them out again, which means you may not feel like they're as stimulating as when you had first put them in. So what we recommend then is skipping a day, and it could be just simply a day, and then put them in the next day, and you get that re-stimulus just like you did when you first put them in. So it's almost like a stimulus holiday or something. Or you can actually alternate. Yeah, just, the conscious mind can only take in so much, so eventually it starts to tune stuff out. However, if it does tune out the insole, that does not mean that from a subconscious neuromuscular perspective that it's now no longer effective. You just consciously don't feel it as much. People like the conscious connection to the insoles and the feet, so that's where we would say skip a day, or we have the 3 different levels of stimulus. What I do personally is I alternate between the different stimulus, and then it just keeps my mind consciously connected to the insoles, and that's what people want. So you don't have to take a break without them, but you just switch the stimulus.
Is there a way to customize this if you have certain things going on with you? Like, let's say you have back pain. Do you have a particular one that you can use to put pressure on the right areas to ease that for you?
Yeah, so great question. When you look at the insole, the texture is actually across the entire insole. But what I would add to that is that they're thin enough to go on top of custom orthotics. So how you said you use custom orthotics, you could actually put the Naboso insole on top of your custom orthotic, and then you get the benefit of both the biomechanical control that you may need because you have flat feet, plus the added sensory. So now we're covering both aspects of foot function. However, if we say someone doesn't have custom orthotics, but they have maybe a neuroma or a callus, or they want to offload different areas, you could still add different paddings and strappings to the insole. I do it a lot for my patients, that I just kind of personalize the insoles by adding paddings and strappings to them, and you could do that. Or you could, cut out certain areas if you feel like you want to offload that. They're easy to cut and integrate into any footwear or existing insole that you may have.
Well, why not integrate these into a sock? So you could have socks with certain textures, or again, on demand if someone has, pain or they're tired or I would think you could customize certain parts of, reflexology supposedly says the whole body's mapped to the foot. So why couldn't you have custom ones for different activities or different, if they're in pain or they're tired or they want this or energy or that kind of thing?
Right. So that's where we do have the 3 levels of stimulus. So we typically guide and say, let's say you're working out and you're going to be running around, maybe you're a runner, then we recommend our 1.5 insole, which is our middle stimulus. It's a little bit more of a dulled down, not dulled down that it's not effective, but think of a pyramid and then you just cut the top of the point off. That's what our 1.5 is. Let's say if someone stands all day, has diffuse foot fatigue, has a medical condition, then that's where we direct them to our neuro insole, which is the most stimulating. It is a true pyramid, so you get the top of the pyramid on the insole, so that's the most stimulating. If someone has more foot sensitivity, we direct them to the 1.0. So that's where we would, I would say, customize in a sense of using the words that you had said, or directing people to the 3 different levels of stimulus. Or we could say that when you stand all day, wear the neuro. At the end of the day, in your slippers at home, almost like a foot massage and foot recovery, go into the 1.5. So you could use that as well. And then I want to add that we are working with different orthotic labs that they're putting it on top of orthotics now, just like I had mentioned, so that you could get some of that customization as well.
Well, what happens if you don't use them, like you said, for a day or two, and you wear, shoes without them? Do they feel dull, or are you compromised in your motion, or do you just feel like normal?
If you have a medical condition, like let's say a chronic neurological condition, neuropathy or whatnot, and you wear them several days, you notice an effect from them, your balance is better, and then you skip a day, just so you stay consciously sensitive to them, you may notice that your balance is shifted a little bit. But what's actually interesting is that we've been seeing, and there's some research around the topic of the chronic effect of wearing textured insoles, which means there's a carryover or this accumulative effect that if you wear them every single day and then you skip a day or you skip a few days, that you're still getting some of the benefit even though you don't have the insoles. There's some really promising research around that, and we're in the works of conducting several different research studies on these different topics just to further validate some of that. But that's what we've seen as well, is we'll actually see a carryover in the pattern of some of these individuals' walking pattern and their stability, even though they don't have the insoles in.
That's very cool. So what's the next step for the next 6 months or a year? What's new, going to change about them, or what's new? Or
Yeah, so we have our full product line. We had launched the company in 2017, and it took through 2017-18 to get our full catalog and the development of the 3 different levels of the insoles, the different mats that we offer as well. So now that we have our full product line, we have our full product catalog, is going into the heavy marketing within neuro rehabilitation and performance. Those are the 2 verticals that we have the strongest effect, and most of our application or users are within those 2. So we are doing work with MS and Parkinson's. We're doing research within those 2 medical conditions, and then pediatrics as well. There's a lot of really promising pediatric applications with texture. One of the research studies that we're doing is around idiopathic toe walking, which is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's children who walk on their toes. There's usually a sensory driver to it. Some of them can have a comorbidity of like a higher upper motor neuron condition, but some of them present completely normal, have no other known comorbidity, but the child is still walking on the toes. When you introduce different sensory stimulation, such as texture or whole body vibration, the child will go down and walk normal heel-toe gait. So it's a really fascinating area within pediatric motor development or neuromotor development. So we're doing a research study on that subject. And then we're working with a few sensory integration schools around children with ADHD and autism. There's often a sensory driver as well, and we've started integrating our mats in their schools and seeing different focus with the children, which is another really exciting category as well.
Quick question. My wife's brother walks on his toes. He's done that his whole life. What's the implication of that? What's the reason? And what do you know about that condition or way of walking that people have?
Yeah, so depending on some of the drivers to it, a large part of the driver is that there is a spasticity, so a spasm or a tightness in the muscles, and muscles are controlled by nerves. So it's a matter of why are those nerves being hyperstimulated? In a lot of cases, sensory stimulation can calm down the hyperactivity of the nerves. A great example, I don't know if you know cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a spastic condition where the muscles get almost over engaged. Yeah. So then they lack flexibility. A lot of people with cerebral palsy walk on their toes as well because of the same spastic. But idiopathic means there's no known cause. So you said this is your brother-in-law?
Yes.
Is it your brother-in-law that? Okay, so your brother-in-law probably has idiopathic, which means there's no known cause of why he walks on his toes, which means...
Yeah, he seems fine otherwise. I don't even know if he knows. He just says he does.
Just a bouncy gait. Yeah, so his would be most likely classified as idiopathic. So I would be really curious if he used the Naboso insoles, if he actually drops down into a more balanced gait. Or You can use whole body vibration. There's different foam rollers that create vibration as well, and that calms down the nerves, and typically you will see the muscle relax and the individual will be able to get more flexion in the ankle to get a heel-toe gait. Now, it doesn't stay, which means you have to keep creating the stimulus. Vibration as a stimulus is a little bit harder because it's hard to walk around with a vibration device on you. Most of the vibration platforms are, think of like an aerobic step, and they vibrate and you can do a release on them and then go about your day. Eventually the muscles will start and tighten up. We're looking to see specifically with Naboso, because it goes in the shoe, it could go with you all day, that does it have a longer effect for some of these individuals with idiopathic toe walking to give them a more balanced gait. I would be really curious for your brother-in-law if either the Naboso insoles, whole body vibration, some sort of sensory would allow him to achieve a more balanced gait.
Yeah, I've tried the whole body vibration, standing on those like vibration tables, but I don't know, I don't really like them at all. They're like very unsettling and they just feel weird. And it doesn't seem to, I don't know how people can stand them for more than a few seconds. But your insoles sound like pretty easy to get used to.
Yeah, very non-invasive, low barrier to entry, ease. You just slide them in the shoes. You don't have to kind of set time out of your day to fit it into the lifestyle, which is really what we're looking for.
Well, very good. So where can people get the Naboso? Do they need a prescription, or you can just buy them, at a store or something, or where do people get them?
Yep. So we sell them online. Our website is Naboso Technology.com. Naboso is Naboso Technology.com. So we have them online. We also have resellers, which are doctors, physical therapists across the U.S., and then a few retailers that we are getting into within orthopedics, surgical supply, and specialty running stores are the ones that carry it. And if there's any questions that people have on what is the most appropriate stimulus, what is the difference between 1.0, 1.5 neuro, we have a great team that is accessible by email and telephone to answer anyone's questions on the insoles to make sure that people are using it effectively and in the most successful way.
Well, very good. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and it's interesting stuff, and keep inventing. It's really interesting.
You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you.